Any clarinet players here? There's a clarinet pedagogy that goes like this. Set your embouchure and blow. How many of you have heard something like that? The problem is that it's mindless. It's not mindless blowing. Now I want to give you some understanding of why we have to have a very precise and accurate awareness of the music. Well, whether you're a clarinet player, bassoon player, flute player, or a brass player, it's nothing more than a hollow tube. It has air in it. And there are acoustical, as Jake said, there's acoustical laws that must be obeyed. You know what those laws are? You cannot make that air column resonate at any frequency. This is in nature. It's the harmonic series, the overtone series. The air column will vibrate at certain frequencies. So what happens if you try to send in a frequency to the air column that it can't accept? What do you think happens?
It doesn't work.
Interference.
It's not good. I use the word rejection. The air column rejects what you're trying to send to it. And by the way, not only do you clam the note, but you feel it at your chops. You feel the rejection at your chops. It's like somebody punching you in the mouth. Or as my friend John said, it's like pushing a piano up the stairs. The air column will reject frequencies that it cannot accept. The overtone series. So if you're not sending in the correct notes that the air column can respond to, it rejects them. And I taught a lot of young students and a lot of instruments. And one class that I had at the high school level, which has not been duplicated anywhere in the country, we had such an overflow of flute and clarinet players at the school. There were 2,000 girls at the school. And a lot of them played flute and clarinet. We had such an overflow, we couldn't put them in the band or the orchestra, or it wasn't in the play. So we created a chamber ensemble. Oh, wonderful. Flutes and clarinets. 20 kids in the classroom, and you know what I did? I took Mozart trios. I took Haydn trios, Beethoven trios, and they're playing this magnificent music. So one group is playing flute, one group is playing clarinet, and one group is playing the oboe part. And I took them to a contest. And it was a contest that there were choirs and orchestras and bands and all kinds of things. And they won the gold medal of the day, this chamber ensemble. And we played a Mozart trio. That's what we did. We played a Mozart trio. But it was at a high level musically. Because that's all I talked about. They knew more about the flutes and clarinets than I did. But we know that there's a problem with clarinets who mindlessly set the embouchure and mindlessly blow, and that's the squeak. We've heard about the squeak. And so, it's a high frequency pitch that's caused by the mindless blowing into the mouthpiece. The reed vibrates independently of the mouthpiece into a high frequency. I have discussed this with counts. I can't tell you how many clarinet players I brought this issue up. And they all say, oh, no, it's a ligature problem, it's a reed problem, it's an embouchure problem. I'm not a clarinet player. But I noticed that when those students were musically committed, aware and committed, there were no squeaks. None. Ever. And they won this gold medal. First prize out of all of those groups. Because they played musically at a very high level. And because they played musically at a high level, they were able to execute at a high level that you wouldn't expect from high school kids. You just wouldn't expect that from inexperienced high school players. So the point is that musical awareness and commitment are what this is about. Now, the ladder that you saw there, I call the ladder of awareness. And we don't even have to say this over here. It doesn't matter. You know what a ladder looks like. And so when I would be teaching, I would say to the students, imagine that there's a ladder in a corner, blah, blah, blah. And then one of my students actually created a ladder of awareness. Jack has all that stuff. He has everything in mind. And I would say, follow the yellow brick road. Now there's a message in the story of the Wizard of Oz. What is the ultimate message in the story of the Wizard of Oz? Anybody? Come on, have some courage.
You already had the thing you were looking for.
What you were searching for is already there. Every person that comes to me for help, I never say anything about how to play their instruments. They already know. But they've lost the ability to access the knowledge and the skill that's already within them. If you've been playing a certain amount of time, that skill develops in the brain. Everybody in this room has developed that skill. I said, follow the yellow brick road, and here's the path. Musical awareness and mental commitment equals physical execution. Everybody wants to put the physical execution ahead of musical awareness and commitment. You cannot rearrange those terms. Musical awareness, mental commitment to that awareness, will motivate the subconscious brain to create whatever is necessary to realize that sound that you want to produce. That's the formula. Then I came up with 3 simple words. Sing, buzz, play. Sing vocally. Buzz your mouthpiece. And Adolf Hirsch's words, transfer the singing and buzzing to the trumpet, to the horn, to the trombone, or whatever. Sing, buzz, play. Sing vocally. Sing notes on the mouthpiece. Send that to the lead pipe. Your commitment must not be to horn playing, cannot be first. Your commitment must be to the music first. Musical awareness. Now the ladder has steps on it. And she painted yellow bricks on the steps. So you could follow the yellow brick road up the ladder, and on the top of the ladder was Emerald City. It was wonderful. It was the same size ladder, just like that. And then I said to her, well, gee, if I get on the plane, it's kind of hard to bring that ladder along. So you know what she did? She made a miniature one for me. Exactly the same. Sing, buzz, play. I don't know, is Thomas back there? I'm going to share something that you said to me years ago. You probably don't think I remember, but I remember everything. He's teaching at the University of Illinois. Gets off the airport there. And Ron Baum meets him at the airport. Remember that?
Yep.
Now Ron Baum is a magnificent trumpet player with the Canadian Brass. And now he teaches at the University of Illinois. He teaches there. And I think he teaches at Northwestern as well now. And the first words that Ron Baum said to Thomas when Thomas got in the car was, sing, buzz, play. Yeah. Those words, remember that? It was a powerful moment for me. Because those were my words. They came from somewhere. They didn't come from, But Adolf Hirsch, this great trumpet player, he has a very simple concept here. It's basically sing, buzz, play. But he says these words, when encountering problems technically or musically, first sing vocally, buzz your mouthpiece, transfer the singing and buzzing to the trumpet. He doesn't say one word about chops, air, tongue, nothing. Sing, buzz, play. Now, Vandercook was a virtuoso cornetist. And around the turn of the century, 20th century, Edison came out with a phonograph, and he said, wait, whoa. He made his living with a brass band, going around the country with a brass band, playing cornet and the whole brass player. And he thought, well, this is something that's going to create a problem for us. So I'm going to start a music school. And I'm going to train my musicians, have them become qualified to teach in the schools so that they could make a living. So that's how the college was started. I never met Vandercook. He died in 1949. But I taught there all those years, and I knew these mantras from this great cornetist and this great educator that founded really all the music education in the United States came from Vandercook. That's where it originated. First mantra, keep it simple. Not complicated. You don't have to sit in front of a mirror. Study your diaphragmatic lift. Get an embouchure visualizer or a mirror and study your chops. You don't have to do that. Keep it simple. And then the other mantra was, if you can sing it, you can play it. If you can sing it, you can play it. Because if you can't sing it, you can't play it. It's coming from the same place in the brain. We just transfer the sound from the brain to vocal cords or from the brain to lips. It comes from the same place in the brain. So when Jacobs talks about it's the same as speech, it's like talking. You have awareness of words and you have commitment to the words you want to say. The subconscious brain takes care of the mechanics. Now I have an Italian heritage, so you notice I'm moving my hands. And we talk like this. I'm not consciously doing that. I notice that it's happening and my hands are moving around. But that's part of what my brain is using to communicate. So I just did this, communicate to you. That was a subconscious reaction. Because I have words that I want to communicate and concepts that I want to communicate to you. So then the question is, how do you become aware, musically aware? Because if you're not musically aware, you cannot be musically committed. You cannot have a high level of commitment to a low level of awareness. It doesn't work. And that's what they're trying to teach in traditional music education. You have a low level of awareness of music. Okay, so now we'll train you to have a high physical commitment to your low level of awareness. It doesn't work. Students know it doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work. I was a product of the system. I knew what was going on there. But I was also had a lot of experience on the stage at Orchestra Home. And so I knew those were two different things. They didn't understand what was going on there. The stage of Orchestra Hall is musical awareness and commitment. And what was generally happening in the schools was, this is how you play. Do this with your lips, do this with your tongue, do this with your throat, do this with your... So my first instrument was the trombone. I was 10 years old, and the band director came into the classroom and, anybody want to join the band? And I came from a very poor background. I couldn't possibly afford a trombone. He says, what instrument do you want to play? I can't afford to buy an instrument. Okay, we can give you a trombone. Okay. So he gave me a trombone, and come home with the trombone. And I was intelligent at 10 years old. I was intelligent enough to figure out this is how it goes together. And the mouthpiece goes in there. And I took a big breath and blew into the mouthpiece, and of course, you know something. I didn't know what to do. But he said, find a trombone teacher. Okay. 1959. The trombone teacher, the lesson was $1.50. Now then you said, well, you would laugh at that. It was $1.50.
Nothing.
It was a big deal. It really was. So I'll never forget the lesson. I had a stand just like that, trombone there. He showed me how to put it together, although I already knew and figured it out. And then he wanted me to play fourth line F as the first note, and that's usually the first note. It's a nice mid-range note. But he started to try to explain to me, what do you do with your, he's trying to, you got to relax and you got to tighten and you have to blow a certain way. And nothing was happening. And I was becoming very frustrated. I think I was in tears. I was a 10-year-old kid. And I could see out of the corner of my eye, he wasn't having any fun either. And this went on for about 15 minutes of trying to tell me what to do with my lips. And by accident, fourth line F came out. But I had no idea whatsoever how that happened. So the lesson was so traumatic and so, I never went back for another lesson. But I'm going to figure out what he wanted me to do with my lips that play the trombone. Finally, the band director said, well, maybe the trombone isn't your instrument. Let's give you the baritone horn. That slide is too complicated for this kid. He's not smart enough. So they gave me a baritone. And that was a miserable failure on the baritone because I was still trying to figure out what to do with my chops.
I think that's your doggy dog.
Still trying to figure that out.
That's why.
Couldn't play the baritone horn. Well, what's the next stop? Tuba.
Oh, there's not a...
There's a dog door, you just
And
have to get through there.
I love music so much. I used to go there on Saturday. He was a clarinet player. He used to give clarinet lessons on Saturday. And I'd be practicing sousaphone. But I was horrible, miserable. Well, the last stop is the bass drum, right? that's where you go. I couldn't play the tuba, but I graduated from elementary school. I had no intention to go on in music, although I love music dearly, passionately. I love music, even at that young age. But there was no, I wasn't going to punish myself. I can't do this. I paid this guy $1.50, and I don't know what he wanted me to do. There's something wrong with me. I'm through. And I have to mention to one of my freshman classmates in high school that I said to him, I used to play the tuba. Well, you know what happened? He ran downstairs as fast as he could to the band room. Hey, there's this kid up here. So what happens is, you're back. And it was something interesting. It was the band director was a very, very prominent virtuoso horn player in Chicago. And there was a member of the Chicago Symphony, a horn player. His daughter was in the band. And I found myself in this environment. He went into a cabinet and he brought out a shiny, brand new King recording bell tuba for me. It was never played. He was keeping it in the cabinet until somebody came along. And I happened to be the one that came along. So he presents me with this instrument. Still couldn't play it. But Frank Brown and his daughter Linda, they would have tickets to the symphony. I could never afford to go to the orchestra hall, buy a ticket to the symphony. But they would get free tickets and they would invite me. And I would go and sit in the gallery. Have any of you been to orchestra hall?
Yes, I
But you weren't there before they ruined the acoustics. In the mid-60s, about 65, they did a remodel, they ruined it. They ruined the sound. But if you listen to the Reiner recordings, that's the real sound.
Yes.
3 microphones, that's all it was. So, but anyway, that's the sound I heard. I was sat in the gallery and I had this sound. But it was not only Jenkins. He had the ability to literally lift the orchestra off the stage. I'm not kidding you. He had so much power. And he knew when to present that power at the right moment that the orchestra seemed to lift off the stage. So as a young kid, I was impressed by that, incredibly impressed by it. So I would go home every day and not only try to imitate him, what he sounded like, I worked to imitate the entire Chicago Symphony, the entire orchestra. And if you're familiar, if any of you are familiar with the CSO sound, it's unique in the world. There's nothing like it in the world. Even today, there's nothing that was inspired literally by Jacobs and Herschel. They had such a powerful commitment to the sound that they influenced everybody on the stage. And that influence, by the way, still carries over to today. They've been gone for decades. They still play like that. You heard the Bruckner 7th Symphony.
Yes.
Bing,
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
oh my goodness, can't even describe what that experience is. Jay Friedman is 85.
85. That's still playing.
I was around when Jay started. I remember when he started, 1962, Kennedy was the president. He's still there, principal trombone. Unbelievable. So every day, for 3 years, 2 to 3 hours a day, sound like a Chicago Symphony. So Frank Brock, the horn player, the esteemed horn player in the Chicago Symphony, would come and hear his daughter play the band concerts. But he couldn't help but notice that tuba player back there. And so one day he said to me, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, someday I hope to study with Mr. Jacobs. Okay, fine. But it wasn't Frank so much, but Frank's wife really took to me. She really liked me at that age. And so she would bug Jacobs. You got to hear this kid. And he would say, oh yeah, sure, have the kid come. Or he would just blow her off, but she was so persistent. She would not stop. So finally, I got word, well, have him call me. Now, Jake had a very melodious voice. Did you ever hear his voice? Hello. That's what you heard when he answered the phone. Hello. This is Roger Rocco. Rocco who? He forgot the whole story. He'd say to me, well, call me in 6 weeks. I'd be there with my watch, waiting for the second hand to come around for 6 weeks later. Hello? Rocco who? The intervals kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So finally, he was testing. That's what was happening. He was testing, and I was like a dog with a bone. I wasn't gonna let go, So I kept, and finally, okay, come on. And he had a picture of the house there.
Yes.
So something happened that day. We talk about moments in our lives where something happens that changes our life. So I walked in the studio. I had to take a CTA bus. I had the tube under the arm and a suitcase with some music in it. I'm walking down the street there. I walked past that house. It's a very unassuming house. It's a small little house. As a matter of fact, this was in September. The Christmas tree from last Christmas was still in the yard. I walked past the house. This can't be it. I walked past and noticed the number. I went back. So I made my way into the basement studio, which you missed out on. Thomas missed out on. There was something special about that basement studio because that was his little environment. It wasn't any bigger than this little area here. But he was a master in control of what was happening in that space. Now when he moved to the studio downtown, the space was big and you didn't have the same sense of what he was, that you were in his world at that point. So I said, play for me. I played for about a half hour. He never said a word to me. But after about a half hour, he said these words. And these words were so powerful that if he hadn't said those words, we wouldn't be here together. Here's what he said. You already sound like you have been here for 3 years. I'm going to give you a full scholarship to study with me, because he knew I couldn't afford it. I didn't have the money. I'm going to put you in the Civic Orchestra, which is the training orchestra of the Chicago Symphony. And here's the reason why. You sound like you've already been here studying with me for 3 years. I didn't realize at the moment that I had been studying with him for 3 years. Because for 3 years, it was not about embouchure, what do you do with your chops? It was about sound like the Chicago Symphony, with an instrument in your hands. And when my state of mind changed from physical awareness to auditory awareness, great things happened. And people ask me, what was it like to play in the Chicago Symphony? It was easy. I'll tell you why it was so easy. The sound around you is so powerful that you have no choice but to go along with the flow. I always said that everybody around me did the heavy lifting, and all I did was go along with the act. It was about the sound and commitment to it, and I can't describe to you their commitment. Somebody was questioning Thomas when I were communicating the other day about people who question their tuning. And here's what I said. I said, those guys are right off the... And I said, I never saw a slide adjust or move one time. There was no fishing. It was right every time. No fishing. There was no question. I remember another time, Jake called me up, he was sick, he says, go and play the rehearsal at Tchaikovsky 4th, Schulte. I was a student at Roosevelt, which is 2 blocks down the street. Show up at home. Schulte gives it down, please. And I heard a sound coming from those homes that I can't even describe to you. There's no description of that sound. But I went, oh, wow. And the trumpets come in. Then there's a descending line. If you're familiar with the opening of Tchaikovsky 4th, a descending line, and it's like a gigantic ball, like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, you know? And the ball's coming at you. And there's a wall of sound coming at me, and the tube is the last one to pick up that sound. Well, what came out of my instrument, the bell of my instrument, I had never experienced in my life before. It was incredible. And I was embarrassed. And so after we got through the opening, I turned to Kleinhammer and I said, the bass trombone, I have to apologize, I don't know what happened. I didn't mean to play like that. And you know what he said? What are you apologizing for, kid? That sounded great. What are you apologizing for? They handed me something that came in my brain, and eventually it came out the bell. There were no breathing lessons or embouchure analysis on the way of that sound to my brain, or after it. I shared a story with Ian a few minutes ago. I'll share it with you. We were doing the Bride of Spring, which has 2 tubas, and a Friday afternoon concert. And Jacobs used to sit in front of his trunk and warm up. And I was sitting I was looking at him. We were sitting like this. You know, you're there and I'm there. And I was watching him, and he knew I was watching him. Well, he started out as a trumpet player, and he used to pretend that he used to play the tuba like it was a trumpet. Way up there, like it was mid-range trumpet, and he'd be playing at the top of the tuba. And he did that purposely. I didn't realize at the time, but I know him. He wanted to influence me at that point. And I go, whoa. Now I couldn't get that out of my mind, the picture. the auditory picture of him sitting there, me watching him, and the sound of him playing 3 octaves above normal range with the ease of a trumpet player playing a mid-range. And we played the Rite of Spring, and I still couldn't get that picture out of my mind. But we had a civic rehearsal after the concert. And so I was down in the basement there, and I sat right in front of his trunk. I sat right in front of it. In the same place that I saw him. And I could see him, I could hear him, and guess what? I could do that. And it was almost, I was frightened by it. Because I had become him. His influence was so powerful. The imagery and the auditory, the visual and the auditory was so powerful that I could not do anything but commit to what I was, that image that was in my brain. I didn't have the knowledge that I have today. I was very young. I was maybe 19 years old. So I didn't understand what I understand today. So I could never duplicate it because I didn't understand it. Now I understand it.